So today's cooking lesson is going to be how to make homemade tomato soup with lovely tomatoes you pick from your garden. I just picked all these, and the first step, of course, is to wash them all. So we'll get these all cleaned up and move on to the next step. So now that I got my tomatoes all washed, I'm going to get a roasting pan and drizzle a bunch of olive oil in the bottom. I plan on doing about 20 tomatoes, so in the tomato soup I am going to put onions. I'm using red onions because I have an abundance of them, and I'm just going to cut them like into quarters or six. You can leave them in pretty big chunks. I'm going to put 5-6 cloves of garlic in here. I'm just going to cut it up because we're going to blend all this, so you can leave them in pretty big chunks. And then you're just going to quarter the tomatoes in here. Take the middle out, leave the peels on. So we're going to... Alright, I got about 20-25 tomatoes in here, about 4 red onions, bunch of olive oil. I'm going to throw in a handful of basil from the garden. And I'm going to put about 6 jalapenos in here. I'll just cut the tops off and cut them into pieces, leave the seeds in. That's not really going to be very spicy, and Dave picked the littlest peppers he could, so it's not like I'm putting monster peppers in here. Once we get this in, I'm going to stir it all up, and we're going to roast it at about 400 degrees for an hour and a half. You can do this in your oven. I happen to have a Nesco roaster, so I'm just going to throw it in there. You can put some salt in at this point too. If you're going to can this, you want to make sure you use canning salt, kosher salt, so it doesn't have those chemical additives that they put into table salt that you buy in the store. Caking additives and iodine that will discolor and sometimes make your canned food taste funky, so you always want to make sure you use canning salt. Alright, so that's that. Once this starts cooking down, it's going to be real juicy, so I'm just going to pour a little more olive oil on there, and then I'm going to put some salt on here. So I'm just going to add about, I don't know, tablespoon or so of salt. I guess maybe 2 tablespoons. You can always add more, so you don't want to overdo it. But again, you want to use pickling and canning salt. There's all different kinds out there. If you're going to can it. I'm not planning on canning this tomato soup today, so. But I just use that salt all the time anyway, so then I never have to worry. Well, these have been in the oven about a half hour. I have them in at 425 degrees. So I'm just going to stir everything up. They're going to cook about an hour and a half, probably closer to an hour and a half. You want to really roast them down so they're really stewed. I was going to do this in the Nesco roaster, but then I would have been dirtying 2 pans, and I have enough dishes to do. So I'm going to continue to let this cook in the oven another half hour, and check back. Alright, these tomatoes will have been in here actually about 2 hours. 425. I think the gas oven might take a little bit slower, but they're looking plenty cooked. So now what you're going to do is get an immersion blender, or you can use a regular stand-up blender, but this one works much better. And you want to be very careful because this is boiling hot and we want to blend it up. So I stick it in there and put it on low to begin with and just start blending away. And get that all those big chunks broken up. So I got the soup all blended with the hand blender. Now I'm gonna press it through the sieve, make it nice and smooth. Be careful because it's hot. It's splashing. This will make nice and smooth, and then what's left, all the solids, I will dehydrate, and it makes a wonderful spicy tomato powder. So I'm just gonna push all this through here until it's empty. So I've pushed most of it through now. It's just the skin and bigger chunks, so I'm just gonna scrape it off the end of my sieve here. And that's pretty much it for that. But we're gonna take that powder and dehydrate it, and it's just wonderful for all kinds of things. So now I have it back on the heat. And you can see it's a nice, smooth, velvety soup. Now I want to taste it. Whoa, this one's spicy. Yikes. So I always add a little sugar then. Not a lot, just a little to take the acidity down. Now at this point, if you're going to can it, you would stop right here and go ahead and pressure can this in pints for 20 minutes. I'm not going to be canning this. I will be eating it and or freezing what's left. So I'm going to give it a taste. Yeah, very good. Alright, I'm going to let this cook a little bit yet. Alright, so I'm only going to fix up enough of this for supper tonight. So I took a couple of teaspoons of flour and some half and half. And I'm going to pour it in there to get it kind of thickened up and give it some richness. It is pretty spicy. I also like to put about a teaspoon or just a bit of chicken bouillon in there. You don't have to, but it gives it a little more depth. It's already pretty thick, actually. And now I'm just gonna pour this in here. Hopefully not get a lot of lumps. And then top it off with a little butter. Maybe another swirl of half and half. And get it to your taste. And then eat it up. Yum. Alright, we've plated up the tomato soup. I put some of my dehydrated celery and dehydrated tomatoes on here. And sprinkled a little Parmesan cheese. Dave, you're going to have a taste. I'm going to tell you right now, it's spicy. Is that the bomb or what? You're a fan?
Yeah.
It's got a kick to it, don't it? Holy kick. Yeah.
Well, let's try it with a little celery, dried.
Well, that's probably not going to be the best. Beautiful. It tastes so good, doesn't it? Homemade tomato soup, nothing like it. While the soup is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and deal with the tomato soup mush powder. It's one of the dehydrator trays, and these are some sheets that I purchased separately, and they're totally reusable so that we can dry in here. Now I dry it in the oven. I had before we got the new dehydrator, and you just use some parchment paper and put the oven on low, and you know, it takes several hours, but you just stir it up every so often and take a herb grinder and grind it up and put it back to dehydrate some more. But this will be a little bit easier than messing around with the oven. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on here and spread it out. Alright, so I got the tomato mush guts, tomato soup mush, spread out on this parchment paper. I'm gonna put it in the dehydrator. I'm gonna put it at about 250 degrees. No, it doesn't go up that far. I'm gonna put it about 155. That's what I do tomatoes at. And leave it in there for about an hour, and then I'll check it again. So this tomato mush stuff has been in the dehydrator about an hour. It's starting to get pretty dry. So I'm just gonna flip it over if I can. So this mush powder's been in there about another hour, so it's still a little damp, but I'm going to stick it in the herb grinder here and grind it up, and then I'm going to put it back in there to dry a little bit longer. It won't take very long once I get this ground up. So I ground it all up. It's pretty dry now, but I can get this into a finer powder. So I'm going to spread it out on this dehydrator and just blast it with a little more air and heat, and then put it back in the grinder. But look how lovely that is, tomato powder. This is spicy tomato powder. I'm gonna have to keep it separate, otherwise people be like, that shit's spicy, girl. Well, it's been dehydrated and sifted through again, and it's nice and dry and beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this in a container and call it done. Tomato soup mush powder. Yum.